make a mug rug today. Show you all my top secret mug rug tips and tricks. So what I've got for you guys today, we are gonna make one of the mug rugs from the Warm and Cozy Mug Rugs and Cup Wraps CDs. And it is the free CD from OESD for this month. And to get your hands on the free CD for October, you need to spend $89 in OESD product. So that would be OESD stabilizers, OESD tools like scissors. I've got a point and press with me today. I've got scissors with me today. Isocord thread, yen met thread, scissor tail stitches designs, OESD designs. Any combination of all of those, $89 will get you the free CD for the month, which I don't have any trouble getting that high when I shop for embroidery things. But definitely if you don't have endless money, budget accordingly each month. There's a free CD next month as well called Warm and Cozy Embroidery, which is more like embroidery that you can plunk on top of other things. Also, warm and cozy themed gingerbread, cuddle in a cup kind of thing. So without further ado, let's make a mug rug. Based on the directions from OESD, they're using ultra clean and tear. Definitely doable in a mug rug. Most of the mug rugs I've made with poly mesh. Both will work. Poly mesh is nice and soft, and it's still easy to turn when you go to actually turn your mug rug right side out. We are making this mug rug from start to finish completely in the hoop. There's no other sewing required. I'm going to use poly mesh. I know personally in this kind of scenario, I'm going to be trimming some applique. It's going to be coming on and off the machine a few times. This is going to make me happier, but clean and tear would totally work as well. So we'll get that in the hoop. Just a point of note, if it's just stabilizer in your hoop, it does need to be fairly tight. If you ever have fabric in the hoop, you don't want to be pulling on that. And then we're just going to follow, I have my directions so that I know what's going on. We're going to do a whole bunch of applique in with our embroidery hoop, and then we're going to do a bunch of decorative stitching, and then we'll have a finished mug rug. This particular mug rug does fit in a 6x10 hoop. It is too wide to fit in a 5x7 hoop. So if your hoops aren't big enough to make mug rugs, we can help you find a machine with a bigger hoop. But essentially the way this is going to go, we're going to do a placement line for our batting and backing and white fabric, or batting and white fabric. And I'm actually just using the very first thread color that will get stitched out as a design detail, which is light green, or whatever other color you think you need. Okay, first things first. I have that lovely placement line all done. I'm going to take this back over here for just a moment. On this particular mug rug, they're calling for batting as well as fusible fleece ironed to the white fabric. This is going to give it nice, some nice loft. It's going to be lovely. Yeah, we're on the right camera. There is small lines that just stitch to the side of this design. That's going to help us line up our back pieces when we're all done. We're just going to color those lines in over to the edge of our hoop so we can see them when we get further along here. It's going to be outside our project when we're all done, so it doesn't matter what color you use. And then my white fabric, I am going to put the fusible Fusion fleece on it. So this is an OESD product, medium iron. It's a very, very, very thin batting, but it's going to give, it behaves almost more like an interfacing. It's going to give our white fabric a little bit of body. It'll be less puckery once we get it embroidered, and it's lovely stuff to work with. I really, really like Fusion fleece for a whole variety of other things. I use it in the back of my scenery appliques so that I do my decorative stitching through it. If it's just raw edge applique, rather than stitching through my entire quilt sandwich and having a whole bunch of detail stitching there. So this is going to cover that placement and stitch line. Oh, and I'm going to put a piece of batting in there too. I'm going to make this So it really protects my table when I put a mug of hot cocoa on here. Batting usually stays stuck in the hoop quite nicely. Fabric should stay stuck to that quite nicely. Our next stitch is a tack down, and we could tape this all in the hoop. So we don't put our fingers in the hoop. That's really the key. Don't put your fingers in the hoop. I'm going to use some OESD tearaway tape. I could have taped that when I was on the table. That would have been smarter. You don't want to press down on your stabilizer. You don't want to distort it as you go. So this is going to be our tack down for our batting, our white fabric with fusible fleece. Our next stitch is a placement line for our dark red fabric. This is going to be on the edge of my mug rugs as you know, swoopy detail piece. We're going to get into the actual applique steps. Oop, there's a red and dark red. I'm doing both of mine red. That's okay. So our next piece here, I don't know if you can see, there's a placement line there. We're going to cover that completely. I'm just going to shimmy that other piece of tape upward for a moment. Maybe it'll come out of there. It's a pretty generous piece of red fabric. We're going to do our tack down. OESD's tack down lines are very, very lovely. They're a double line, so even if you cut through the outer one, when you're trimming your applique fabric out, usually not a big deal. And you never want to trim your fabric with your hoop in the air. We want to pull that hoop right off, keep it flat on the table. And with OESD designs, you do want to trim very close to that applique fabric. On this case, the outer edge here is going to end up in our seam allowance, and I'm not going to trim that out. Otherwise, I'm going to have my turned fabric right at the edge of my thing, and I don't want it popping out from the outer seam line. So trimming right next to that outer stitching line. And I'm going to leave that outer piece in my seam allowance for the mug rug. I'm going to do just the same red in both cases. My favorite way of doing this is with curved scissors. Our next piece is our other red fabric detail. It doesn't have to be red. I'm going to make it red. It's the opposite corner. So we're going to do our placement line, put our fabric down, follow up with a tack down line and a trim. Piece off. Again, I'm not trimming right into the seam allowance side of this, just trimming the decorative side of that applique piece off. Save my little tiny piece of tape for the next step. onto our string of lights. Stitching here is the satin stitch cover along the edge of the red detailing. I'm gonna do that pink because I can. Do that red. I'm gonna do that red. Brown detail on our gingerbread man, some shadowing. Left a fair number of thread tails, so I will trim those out before they get tangled in my white detail stitching. White stitch detailing here, and then putting our back pieces on, and we'll flip this beastie inside out. So our next step, we're going to be dealing with the back pieces. The markings we made on our hoop earlier is where we're going to line up the two pressed back pieces. They're both folded in half. We're going to put the folds towards the middle of the mug rug. We're going to line up the first one with the far from it marking. Second one at the other end, also fold towards the middle. Should be it's about 3/8 of an inch overlap. It's important in this step to tape this at that seam so that those don't catch your foot. I tape longer than I need to because I don't want things to go wrong. This is the back of our mug rug. All done. All in the hoop. It's magical. I did not stick that tape down very well. So, do as I say, not as I do. Lessons in embroidery with Leah. I'm gonna trim the thread. It's going to let me recover and take all that tape off my foot. And just like that, we are done our mug rug. Other than the part where we need to like turn it right side out and trim it. A recommendation for how you deal with your mug rug from here is super simple. You're going to trim the whole thing at 3/8 seam allowance. It's going to give you a nice amount of fabric to hold on to turn. Get the hoop out of the way. We could take off extra tape at this point. It doesn't need to be there now. Stick all the tape to the table. So I'm going to trim this at a 3/8 seam allowance. This is wider than a traditional seam allowance for lots of quilting applications, but it's a whole lot easier to turn and have really nice, clean, tidy corners. So lots of people are really tempted to angle off the corners in here. You don't want to do that and remove critical structure in your seam in your corner. We're going to do what we like to call Anne's corners. for how we turn this right side out and get our corners nice and super flat. So that's all out. So in here, what we're going to do to turn the corners on this thing, that right away. I'm going to go in thumbnail up with my left hand. I'm right-handed, so this is going to work nicely. We're going to go up into the corner, thumbnail up, and I'm going to use my thumb as support, and we're going to fold the seam allowance back on a nice crispy line and back on a nice crispy line. If this is too bulky to do this with, you can trim out batting, and the cutaway stabilizer that I used, do not trim out your fabric. So we're going to make a nice 90-degree corner. It's going to be all nicely folded. We're going to take that from our thumb, transfer it onto our finger. And it's going to give us a nice 90-degree corner. Just looking at this one and knowing that I do have fusion fleece and batting in there, I'm going to go in and trim those two out into the corner to reduce some of the bulk. Personal preference, you don't need to, but I don't want a bulky fat corner on my mug rug, tipping my coffee mug over. And I'm not trimming fabric, just batting and the soften, the fusion fleece. So folding a nice 90 on my thumbnail, transferring it over to my finger. It's giving us a pretty square corner. We'll deal with that in a moment. Just like that. We have a mug rug. Theoretically, there's a stiletto right nearby. Just going to save our last step. So a stiletto also might be known as an awl. If your corners aren't as square as you want them, at this point you can go in and lift the seam out of the corner. And it's a gentle lift, not a pluck. You don't want to pop stitches. You don't want to make it angry. And then from here, your best bet is a good press with some steam from the back into an OESD press cloth. And the steam and a clapper. The clapper on a hot seam will help press that and set that seam super crispy and flat. They are so lovely when you take care of that last step. It's that final finishing detail to take it from a little bit of a Ripley mug rug into a pristine, easy to mail gift. So just for a frame of reference, after a good press, they're nice and thin instead of kind of poofy. Much nicer when they're crispy flat. So that's what I have for you guys today. Thank you for hanging out and watching an incredibly long embroidery channel episode of Facebook Live. If you haven't got your free CD for October yet, you have some time. And then $89 Canadian will get you the CD for free. Or you can buy it for $89, but it makes more sense to get it for free with $89 of other stuff. Thank you for all of you who tune in and watch us do what we do. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for all the warm comments you guys make. It makes our days. It's been a weird year, so thanks for hanging out. We appreciate it, and we'll see you around. Have a great weekend, everybody.